Canada holds a resource America cannot easily replace. And Washington knows it. While the US built a massive tariff wall against Canadian goods, one critical product was left outside it. American farmers depend heavily on Canadian potash to keep crops growing. And that means Canada has a powerful card that tariffs cannot take away. Canada supplies roughly 85% of the potash that American farmers spread across their fields every planting season. Saskatchewan alone produces something like 36 times more potash than the entire United States. There is no domestic substitute waiting in the wings. As the trade conflict heated up through July 2026, American farm organizations watched fertilizer prices with genuine alarm because they understood a truth that no tariff can rewrite. When it comes to potash, the American Farm Belt belongs to Canada, and the reasons are locked in the ground itself. The reliance runs even deeper than the export share suggests. The United States imports more than 90% of the potassium it consumes, and over 80% of those imports arrive from Canada. Saskatchewan's Athabasca and Elk Point deposits rank among the largest and highest grade potash reserves anywhere on Earth, roughly 1.1 billion tons measured in potassium oxide equivalent. Set against that, American domestic mines account for less than 1% of global output. The chasm between what American agriculture uses and what American mines can produce is impossible to close on any timeline that matters, because opening a single new potash mine takes close to a decade and demands billions in capital. The early days of the trade war already proved how sensitive this pressure point is. When the Trump administration slapped its first 25% tariff on Canadian goods in early 2025, potash was swept up in it, and within days, American farm groups filed formal objections. The administration blinked, cutting the potash rate from 25% down to 10% through a separate executive order inside roughly a week. That swift retreat is the single most revealing moment in the entire potash saga. Washington imposed a full tariff, absorbed immediate fury from its own farm state political base, and backed down almost immediately. Even at the softened rate, the cost landed on American farmers, and it kept landing. The math behind that cost is concrete. Before the tariff threat surfaced, potash traded around $450 per ton, according to the Illinois Production Cost Report. A full pass-through of a 25% tariff could have tacked on more than $100 per ton to Canadian-sourced supply. American farmers burn through roughly 5.3 million metric tons of potash a year. At an extra $100 per ton, the total hit approaches $530 million a year, absorbed directly by American agricultural producers. Reuters documented back in March 2025 that farmers on both sides of the border were staring down soaring fertilizer prices. American growers squeezed on the input cost side while simultaneously facing Canadian retaliatory tariffs on the revenue side. Parliamentary research on the potash relationship spelled out plainly why substitutes simply do not exist at commercial scale. Russia and Belarus rank as the next largest global producers, supplying roughly 15% of American imports between them. But Belarusian potash sits under Western sanctions dating to the 2020 political crackdown, and Russian commodity exports are tangled in banking restrictions and geopolitical fallout from the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Neither can serve as a stable, sanctions-compliant stand-in for the 80+% market share Canada commands. Put simply, no alternative supplier on Earth could fill the hole that a disruption to Canadian potash would tear open. This is where a fertilizer cost turns into a food supply question. Potassium is one of the three primary macronutrients, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, that commercial farming cannot function without. Corn, soybeans, wheat, and nearly every major American crop depend on potassium applications tuned to their yield targets. A farmer cannot simply skip potassium in an expensive year without accepting smaller harvests, because nutrient deficiency produces documented, predictable yield declines. So the choice is stark: pay the higher price or grow less. And reduced output on the same acreage pushes prices upward on the very food those crops become. And if you want the real story behind how Canada is still holding its ground through tariffs, wars, and hard times, hit join below to join the membership for exclusive documentaries you won't see anywhere else about Canada's progress and rise through uncertainty. Canadian officials have understood this leverage clearly and named it openly. Ontario Premier Doug Ford placed potash alongside electricity and oil when he laid out Canada's economic tools at the Council of the Federation, pointing out that Canada is America's #1 supplier in the world and arguing the United States should feel the pain rather than Canada absorbing it endlessly. That framing captures the recognition that potash is one of the categories where Canada's supply dominance is structural, a position American buyers simply cannot route around. The July 2026 escalation sharpened everything. When the Trump administration signed its 50% tariff proclamations on July 20th, 2026, potash landed on the exemption list, right beside energy, critical minerals, and fish. That exemption is the clearest possible admission of American dependence. An administration willing to hammer wine, dairy, cement, furniture, and hockey equipment with 50% rates, specifically carved potash out because taxing it would drive fertilizer costs into its own farm sector at a level Washington was unwilling to inflict on its agricultural base. The carve-out is a documented acknowledgement that potash is the one category America cannot afford to tax. Even with the exemption, the market carried the strain. BHP's Jansen mine in Saskatchewan, a multi-billion-dollar project set to add around 4.35 million tons of annual capacity, kept advancing, deepening Canada's already commanding global position. The potash import price index climbed from 164.5 to 186.5 over the course of the dispute, reflecting an uncertainty premium baked into the market even where exemptions applied. American farmers making purchasing decisions for the coming season did so knowing the exemption could vanish with the next executive order. Global news traced how this fertilizer dimension flowed straight into American food prices and farm profitability. Higher potash costs squeeze farm margins, raise the production costs of crops that feed both American consumers and export markets, and eventually reach grocery shelves. The supply chain linking Saskatchewan mines to Midwest corn and soybean fields has run smoothly for decades, built around rail lines, blending facilities, storage terminals, and application equipment, all calibrated to Canadian supply. Breaking that chain would mean rebuilding physical logistics infrastructure, not just finding a new seller. The planting calendar makes it all more acute. Potash for spring corn and soybean planting is usually bought and delivered the previous fall or in the early spring weeks before the fields open. A farmer purchasing under tariff uncertainty pays a risk premium before any tariff is even finalized, because supply contracts signed under uncertainty carry hedging costs. The July 2026 escalation, arriving right in the heart of the planning cycle, layered exactly that premium onto purchasing decisions across the Farm Belt. And Canada's dominance is not some passing market quirk. It is geological, capital-intensive, and growing. Saskatchewan holds the world's largest reserves. BHP's Jansen mine is adding capacity. Canadian producers are deepening ties with Brazil, India, China, and Southeast Asia markets that give them alternatives to the American buyer if the relationship sours further. American farmers, meanwhile, depend on a supplier that is expanding its output, diversifying its customers, and weathering tariff measures that have so far produced not one new American mine to loosen that grip. Washington built a wall against Canada and left a hole for potash because it had no other choice, and Canada knows it.